So I'm delighted to have Olivia with me today from the HR department. Olivia, thanks for coming in.
Thanks for having me.
How are you today?
I'm good. Yeah, pretty good.
So look, HR department might sound self-explanatory, but quite often people don't know what actually goes on behind the scenes. So can you take us through, your day-to-day and the type of things that you would cover?
We provide outsourced HR services to the SME market. And that is anyone that is taking on their first employee and wants a contract and wants that hand-holding, wants to know about expectations, what happens if it all goes wrong, how can we safeguard them, etc. Right up to my biggest client has 870 employees, a full complement of HR people, but probably sometimes run out of HR people to work through processes or need an extra pair of hands, and everything in between. So we do contracts, handbooks, disciplines, grievances, redundancies, 2P, talent management, recruitment, induction, you name it. The life cycle of a staff member we can support and help with.
Okay. And what do you enjoy most about what you do?
Probably the variety. People come to you with a conundrum. They've gone down a dark hole somewhere and then they need to see light at the end of the tunnel. And so it's really nice when we can say, hey, hang on a second, let's take a step back. Let's see what we can do and where we can get to try and make this a win-win situation as best we can, or at least protect the business.
Mm-hmm. And do you see a lot of cases where people have maybe got themselves in a pickle because they've not taken advice early enough, or they've ignored advice, or what's common?
Yeah, well, oftentimes we have people that say, oh, no, we've got our contracts done by lawyers, so they're all good. And then you read them and you would need a dictionary and a thesaurus and a whole firm of lawyers to actually understand what's going on in it. And it's so hard to explain and it's so complicated that it causes more hassle because one person has one expectation and someone else has another expectation, where we would try to make it as simple as possible. Everyone knows where they stand. Expectations are really clear, and it moves forward in the right way, and everyone knows, what the outcome should be. Oftentimes we have people that are afraid to speak. They're afraid to say something. I better not say that because.
Is this the employee or the employer?
Employers, sorry. Yeah.
Okay.
I shouldn't say that, or if I say that, it could mean this X, Y, and Z, and they're petrified to say something. And we try and make it that they are being really honest, being really open, and actually helping the employee understand where they're coming from, as well as, what the business needs.
Yeah, because I guess you're there to make sure everyone gets a fair outcome from whatever happens, aren't you?
Absolutely. The ideal scenario, it doesn't always happen, but the ideal scenario is to come out with a win-win, so that the employee feels like they're vindicated and whatever issues they've had or whatever problems they have, they understand at least where the business is coming from, or the employer is getting their point across to support the business going forward.
And what are the most common things you see SMEs getting wrong out there?
There can be anything from silly things where they don't need a contract because they're my friend. That one gives me the heebie-jeebies every single time. Because not only are you going to lose a staff member, but you're also going to lose a friend if you don't get it right from the beginning. Mm-hmm. The other thing is they don't do policies soon enough. And so everybody but that's not how we do it. And that's not what it is. And then they try to bring it in and it can cause terrible friction because, again, the expectations are mismatched. Money always causes issues, salary reviews, commissions. We try to make sure that when we are putting those kind of policies together, that we put loads of examples in so that, it's really, really clear. It's not just an agreement. It's really clear as to if you do this, this is how much money you get.
Yeah.
And then sometimes it's just personalities, which are really difficult ones because there can be, a little issue that becomes a bigger issue and becomes a bigger issue. And because it wasn't communicated correctly at the very beginning, it escalates into a huge problem. And that can cause big problems.
Mm. And we talked the other day, we were talking about the importance of handbooks in business. So tell me why they're important.
I think they're super important because everybody knows where they are. Everybody knows where they stand. Like I said a little while ago, people don't put those policies in place. And so they assume that something is as it is. And the business assumes something else, which is going to cause friction because they're going in different tangents. And everyone's going to always assume it's in their favour. So when it isn't, it can cause friction. It also means that the business doesn't have to spend a load of time when an issue does arise figuring out what to do, because it's all there in black and white. It's really simple. You just follow this, this, and this, and you carry on. And it saves time. Because when someone says to you, what happens if I go out sick? What happens if I get pregnant? What happens if I'm caught speeding? What happens if X, Y, and Z? It's all there. Blame the book. It's all in the policy document. So you don't need to go through the motions of doing that.
And I know you can't give us examples, but you must have seen some crazy things, I guess, over your career.
Yeah, I could tell you some stories.
You could write a book about it.
Absolutely could.
And how did you get to where you are now? What did you start off doing?
So I went to university to be an accountant.
Oh.
And then I thought my personality was much better than that. And so I went into HR. No, I'm just kidding. Yeah, I always loved numbers, maths, accountancy. All that was my thing in school, contrary to what you might believe now. But I fell in love with industrial sociology, industrial psychology, all that element of the people watching, sitting in the airport, watching people, watching their body language, watching how they behave, etc. And fell in love with HR and came out with a degree in accounting and human resource management, specialising in accounting. And I've pretty much been doing it ever since. So I'm kind of a one-trick pony. I went into the bank straight from school, into the Department of Industrial Relations, which will nicely age me. I went in as a 2-week internship and came out 17 weeks later. So they kept renewing my internship. I then
Must have liked you.
They must have done.
Yeah.
I don't know why. Then I went into branch banking for a while and couldn't understand why they kept me in branch banking because I was so important and intelligent and I had a degree. So I resigned from there and they then moved me back into HR rather than lose me again. And then I went travelling for a while. And then I came back and I worked as a HR manager for a small company in Ireland that did construction and retail and the motor trade. And it just grew from there, came to the UK, worked in London for 10 years. And then decided I didn't want to work in HR anymore. I'd done enough of it and I was done. And I took about 6 months off and did very little, lots of walking and making nice dinners and getting my head back together. And then I came across the HR department, which is a franchised organisation. And like I said, I was doing nothing else. So I had a little jolly down to Bristol and met the team down there. And I really liked what they stood for. It wasn't about selling. It wasn't about their ethics and morals were in the right place as far as I was concerned, and they were aligned. And I think that's what kind of turned me off the corporate world, is my ethics and morals weren't aligned with some of the things that were happening there, which is why I resigned. And they told me it wasn't about selling, it was about helping businesses. And I know that's a bit of a cliche when you're running your own business, but that's what I genuinely believe. And that's how they support us in what we do. So as a franchised organisation, a lot of people go, oh, franchises, this, that and the other, and they have opinions on it. But they're really protective of their brand. They're really protective of who is allowed into the brand and how we get there. And then they're really supportive in making sure that works, and we're building a business that supports SMEs. They're heavily involved in advising the government and with SME businesses from a people strategy perspective. So yeah, I like how they operate as a business, and this is why I bought into that whole franchise. I never wanted to be a business owner. Never wanted to own my own business.
I was going to ask why you did that, and if there was, but the models sound part of it. But was there ever a kind of moment you thought, oh no, what am I doing?
Yeah, loads. So I never wanted to own a business because I'd seen so many people around me have businesses and fail miserably and fall out with people, and it was one of those absolutely never go there scenarios. And then went down to Bristol. I started looking at jobs in HR around London, and my heart just wasn't in it. I was turning up for interviews ill-prepared, and considering I advise people on how to interview, people, I remember one specific case where they said to me, who do you think is our biggest competitor? And I was like, hadn't a clue. And it's one of the really, and it was that. I remember walking down the steps, it was lashing rain, and I thought, this isn't for me. So I need to think of something else. As I said, came across the HR department, went down to see them, and I liked what they had to say. And they said that they would support someone in their own business and that they would help with the things I don't know about, such as the marketing and branding, and if I were to sit down and try and think of a company name or brand colours or any of that, that would have just sent me in the opposite direction. So that was all done for you. So that was kind of why I had a couple of months and thought about it, and then decided to take the plunge.
And so was franchising the right way to go in retrospect then? Because there's a lot of HR people out there doing their own thing, aren't they?
I think so. I've got 200 colleagues that I can ask questions to at any given day. I send out an email saying, oh, I've never worked with a prep school before. Anybody got any advice? I'll get at least 8 to 10 answers within minutes.
Yeah.
Or do you want to have a chat? We have this situation, or this is going on in the news at the moment, which could impact, et cetera, et cetera. We have the buying power of a large organisation. So any of the services that I can't provide personally, such as HR benefits or pensions or payroll, etc., we have, and we've also got 200 people testing them.
Yeah.
So it's making sure that it's right all the time. Like even our IT provider has just been changed because a number of people weren't happy with the service. So it's a really nice, and I don't have to do any of that. They provide all our content and stuff like that, or a lot of the content, and keep us up to date. So everything is legally compliant because of how they do it. If I were to do that, it would take up so much of my time.
Yeah.
We are dictated by geographical territories, which is probably the only bit that kind of irks me a little bit, because you kind of got to stay within your own dance space, and I'm not very good at staying in my own dance space. So that can be a little bit frustrating from the downside of this particular franchise. But the upside far outweighs it, if I'm really honest with you.
And what happens if somebody from out with your territory wants to work with you?
As long as we're okay with that, then that's fine. There's a commission structure in place so that we can work together. Some people are very protective of their dance space. Some people aren't. Same with anything. My personal theory is, if you come along to me and you say, Olivia, I'm not in your territory, I'm in someone else's territory, then the reality is that you know me and you want to work with me. And so most of the time that licensee would say, just go ahead and do it.
Yeah.
And that's how I would feel, because people buy from people. I know it's an old cliche, but it's so true. If you're telling someone, I've messed up, I've got this massive problem in my business, you've got to trust that person that you're going to and speaking to. Yeah. And if I pass you on to someone else, it feels automatically like icky, in my opinion.
Yeah, and there has to be a click, I guess, with your clients as well. And let's not gloss over your experience, because tell us about, I'll get this a bit wrong, but you sit on a board or you advise a board? Tell us a bit about
that. So I am MCIPD, which is Chartered Institute of Personnel Development. I also sit on their Code of Conduct panel, which means that if a grievance is taken against a HR professional, in the capacity of their HR role, and there's a possibility that it will come across my desk to assess to see if they are okay to continue as HR professionals under the umbrella of the CIPD. So I've been doing that for about 7 years or so.
So that must be a real accolade to be asked to do that.
It really helps when you're stood in front of a tribunal judge, I can tell you. Yeah, they tend to like that a lot, because it's ongoing training. It's constant training. It's also like it's a very high standard as to where our profession lies if you adhere to the Code of Conduct panel. So it's a lot about morals and ethics and how you protect the CIPD branding.
And you've got a team as well. So tell us about the process of growing the team and how that's been.
I have the best team in the whole wide world, as I keep telling you. And you have to kiss a few frogs along the way, which I did. But Iqbal has been with me 7 years. She's payroll genius. I've worked with payroll people all my entire career. She is phenomenal. She could write your pay slip with your tax code and everything else on the back of a napkin. Yeah. Because she's old school, and she doesn't need a system to work that out for her. She does it all in her head. So she's a genius as far as I'm concerned, because that is not my area of expertise. She tells me to stay away from numbers because I get them wrong. Connor joined us about 3 years ago. So he connected with me on LinkedIn, and he is so driven. He is all about the business and growing it and making us right in what we do. He does a lot of our policies and procedures, looks after clients. A a lot of the time, Connor's the one that we send out into the field when there's grievances or disciplines to hear those kind of things. And then Alina joined us in November of last year, and she is a machine, is what I would describe her as. If you ask her to do something, it's already done. So conscientious, so caring. Iqbal gets frustrated with her because she's so nice and is so nice to our clients, and sometimes you have to be a little bit tougher than that. But yeah, she's an absolute superstar and a gem.
Sounds like you've got a great support network there.
Phenomenal.
And you talked about challenging conversations. How do you approach those when actually maybe the employer's wrong or they've done something wrong? How do you face up to somebody and say, you've got it wrong here?
I think part of our brand, as you know, in my little team, is that honesty, because at the end of the day, I kind of sit with that we are there to protect the business. We're not there to protect the employer per se or the owner of the business. Our job is to protect the business. Because if we end up in front of a tribunal judge, we need to make sure that we are doing and saying the right things. Oftentimes we have to stand up to employers and say, like, you know, people come on and say, oh, so-and-so did such and such, so it's gross misconduct. And you're going, hang on a second. You know, it's not that bad. It's not that serious.
Yeah.
And you've got to explain to them why and how and what else can we do. So we have a big motto of not saying no. So a lot of times when you talk to HR, they go, you can't do that. Oh, no, you can't do that. We try to not say you can't do that and figure out what it is, what's the best way forward for the business, and what's the best way forward for the people involved. Because if you're talking about small businesses and you've got 7 people in an office or 15 people in an office, if 2 of them are not getting on,
it's a big deal.
It's a massive deal.
Yeah.
Or if one of them is not in because they're unwell. You know, we have businesses with 5 people, 1 person out, that's 20% of their business is not working. That's a huge strain on the other 4 people. So it's trying to make sure that we are protecting all parties, doing all the right things by all the right people, but also at the end of the day, protecting the business and making sure that if we end up at tribunal, we're in the best place that we can be. And I'm very proud to say I've got a 100% tribunal record thus far. And yeah, because of that, doing the right thing. And previous boss I had used to say to me, I'd say, well, the law would say that, and I'd say, yeah, but what's the right thing to do?
Yeah.
And I kind of stand by that a lot of the time, and manoeuvring our way around the law and in and out the little gaps is the way to get that right most of the time.
And so, you know, as you know, my background's corporate, and so we were always very clean on processes when it came to, you know, investigatories or back to work and all that kind of stuff. It was there, and you know, we couldn't set a foot wrong. What's it like in SME world in terms of having that quality of clarity on some policies? Does it vary a lot?
Yes and no. We try to, like I say, we always try to make sure that if we stand in front of a tribunal judge, we're at least hitting the ACAS guidelines, the best practice guidelines, because that's the first thing a tribunal judge will go to. So did you hit this very low requirement? But it depends on lots of things, like, you know, how long is the person in the business? How many times have we spoken to them previously? What is the best thing for the business? One of the big questions we get asked, you know, oh, this person has done this, can we turn off all their IT? And you're like, well, no, because we need to make sure that they have done all those things. I know you believe right now that they have, but you've not shown me one piece of evidence to back that up. So it's a kind of a mixture of both, Yvonne, depending on the situation. If someone has clearly done something wrong and we're 90% certain of that, yeah, we would definitely pull them out of the business. It used to be the case that you would suspend someone. People suspended employees left, right and centre all of the time. You can't do that anymore. You've got to make sure, because while suspension is not part of a disciplinary process, if you've got a business of 7 people and someone disappears after, you know, information superhighway gets hold of them, then they're automatically guilty until proven innocent.
Yeah.
And we can't have that in small businesses. We've got to be able to make sure we're doing the right thing by everybody. It can be difficult. Like I say, you've got 7 people in an office, they all talk. It's you know, it's tricky, but we have to try and make sure that we're doing everything that we can possibly do, which is also a good reason why you have external HR, because the people involved aren't always impartial.
Yes, yeah, they're in that bubble, aren't they? Mm-hmm. And did you see much change post-pandemic then in terms of the advice you were being asked for?
Post-pandemic, I expected a lot of redundancies post-pandemic. I thought everybody was kind of sitting, waiting. We had furlough. We had all these things happening. No, we've got a pandemic for 2 weeks. Oh no, it's 2 months. Oh no, it's longer.
It's 2 years.
Yes. So nobody knew what was kind of going on.
Yeah.
We were never as busy as we were during COVID. Just craziness, because people were so uncertain and so unsure. And then I expected this huge redundancy phase, and it didn't happen. And what did happen was grievances. And in my 26 year, career span, I think in the last 18 months, I've done about 3 times the amount of grievances as I have done in my whole entire previous.
What's driving that then?
Martin Lewis is a lot to answer for.
Oh, really?
I can tell
you need to have a word with him then?
I need to have a serious word with him. There's a lot of things. People, like a lot more employee issues came to the forefront during COVID because of the things like furlough, and people were more interested, I think. And there's an awful lot of people that didn't want to work from the office anymore. They wanted to work from home. And, they were getting the same amount of money and they weren't paying $3,000 in travel expenses. Right. So they had $3,000 back in their own pocket, not having to move, and they didn't have an hour and a half's commute, etc., etc. So there was a lot of that. And that's still going on. How many years later? Where we still are trying to get people back into the office or. What else happened? And I thought I was thinking, gosh, have I done something really badly wrong here that there's so many grievances amongst my clients? But I spoke to all of my colleagues and they were like, nope, we've gotten the same thing. So there was a lot of, I think people were a little bit more knowledgeable. People were not settling as they had done prior to COVID. There was a lot of people saying changing careers, changing jobs. Even here in Glasgow, we lost 60% of our taxi drivers because people were like, why would I want to do this? Yeah.
I never heard that.
Yeah. It was an absolute nightmare when I moved here for us to try and get a taxi. So yeah, I think there was just a lot of fluctuation in the labour market. And that, I think, drove where people were like, well, I'm not settling anymore. I'm not settling for this. So I can do X, Y, and Z. In a small business, again, grievances are a nightmare because it's really difficult to find that win-win situation. And we would always steer people, we'd always try and not discourage them from taking grievances. That's not what I'm saying, but try and explain to them, because people say, I'm going to take a grievance, but they don't think, what's the step after that? And what happens after that? And at the end of all of this, where will I actually be? Will I be able to work with this person that I've taken a grievance out against? And so we try to steer them in that journey to make sure that they're really aware of, if they take this grievance, that this is what the issue is.
Yeah.
So yeah, I'm not sure exactly why that's happened. Unfortunately, we're now seeing a spate of redundancies, and with the results of the election today, I'm not quite sure where that's going to go in the next couple of weeks or next 100 days, isn't it? The 100-day manifesto. Yeah, let's see what. Yeah, I think we will be busy.
And when should SMEs take you on as a retained part of their business?
I think that they should take us on 20 months into when they have their first employee. So I think we should do their contracts to start with, and make sure that they're above board and correct, easy to use and fit for the business. We have a lot of times people start up a new business and they've just come out of the corporate world, and they want to do everything different. We want to be the best employers. We want to give loads of holidays. We want to give loads of sick pay. And we just kind of pull them back a little bit and say, right, okay, we can do all of that, but let's do a little testing period. Let's do it after probation, or let's do it after 12-month service, or etc. Because they forget that everybody's not programmed the same way as they are. But the reason currently 20 months in, as I say, let's see what happens in the next 100 days. Because 2 years is the protection that you get from the law. So nobody can take an unfair dismissal claim, can't really take any kind of a claim up until 24 months service. So if we come on at 20 months,
I see.
Then we have what we call tribunal indemnity insurance. So if they end up in court, we pay for it.
Oh, I didn't know that.
Providing they take my advice and they don't go all maverick and Lord Sugar and fire people at will. Yes.
And so when they take the first employee on, they should get all their policies set up. Is that right?
Not necessarily. I think they need to make sure that they're referencing ACAS in the very beginning. We normally say 6 to 8 employees is when you should get your handbook in place, but know what you're supposed to be doing up until that point. Definitely you have to have a contract in from day one or before someone starts. With our contracts, we do letters of offer and privacy notices because they're kind of your baseline stuff. But then go on to the retained service around 20 months in.
Okay. And what has been your challenges in growing your business then? What have you found that you've had to learn?
Me probably is my biggest challenge.
Okay.
I think I said to you when we started working together, my business has grown or has developed despite me. And it's just kind of toddled along, and it's gotten to a point where all was good in the hood until I met you, and we had a chat, and I realised it wasn't just you. I knew that there was things that needed to change. I needed to put processes in place. I couldn't sustain working 14-hour days, which is what I was doing up until that point.
Yeah.
And I needed to understand and not a suck it and see situation, which is what it had been up until we started working together.
Yeah. You've been a victim of your own success in some ways because you've done so well at growing the business.
Yes.
And then it's like you had to zoom back out to think about how do we work this slightly differently. Is that fair?
100% fair. Yeah, for sure. As I said, I'd like it to grow because of me, not despite me.
Yep.
And has grown despite me up until that point for that reason. Like, as in, we've picked up clients. We don't do a whole lot of advertising in London anymore, and we're still picking up clients on a monthly basis. We're starting to pick up in Glasgow now and getting a little bit more traction. It's a great business. It's a great little business. It just needs some structure and it needs some help.
And you've got...
Which is where you come in.
Thank you. But you have got closer to your numbers in the last few months, haven't you? What's been the benefit of that?
I was able to, without being scared out of my mind, move from having 2 part-time employees to 2.5 FTE. I now know when there's money coming in and money going out, which means that I'm not sitting there going, oh my God, I'm going to have to sell a kidney in the next week or so to try and make ends meet. And I know what I need to go after as opposed to just waiting for it to come to me from a selling perspective or from a getting new clients perspective. It's a much more comfortable space to be in most of the time. Most of the time.
Yeah, and it's like in business, you always have the highs and lows, don't you? The ups and downs.
Yeah, and I think before I would just get really scared and really panicky, whereas now, while we're at that kind of break-even space, I know that I'm just on the verge of 2 or 3 more clients to get myself back into a comfortable position, having taken on more staff, etc. So we're kind of at that transition point again. Yeah. So
it was the knowing of things, wasn't it? And actually we see it in black and white just helped make the decision, didn't it?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
1,000,000%.
And the next 6 months, what does that hold for you? 6 months of the year? You aim to grow the business a little more?
Yep. We have capacity to absolutely grow the business. I know what kind of clients I'm looking for. I'm going to take on a PA, so I'm not drowning in admin. The business has the capacity to probably take on the number of clients we have today again without us having a huge extra cost base.
Excellent.
So that will mean actually putting money aside and not worrying when there's a VAT bill due, etc. That's where we're at.
And what kind of clients are you looking for then, just in case anyone's watching and thinks, oh, that's me?
We would specifically like clients in that have 30 to 50 employees that don't have a HR department and want us to do everything from strategic planning to all of their admin to payroll admin, write their documents, deliver their documents, hold their documents, create a HRIS system for them. So exactly what you would have if you were a large corporate business with an in-house HR department, we can do that remotely. And the other side, the other type of client I'm looking are large corporates that need an extra pair of hands. We have a couple of pretty big clients that when things get very scary, they roll me in to take on the disciplinaries, the grievances, the redundancies, the appeals, etc. So it's dipping in and out or doing some training, etc. for those larger clients that, have a HR team in-house, but maybe don't have the same level of experience that I would have had in my past, or they just need an extra pair of hands.
Okay, sounds good. So look, well done on where you've got to so far. You've got great business, and I look forward to seeing where you take it in the future. So wishing you every success.
Thank you very much.